नमस्कार, मेरो नाम पवन गुरुङ। म भाषा अनि साहित्यको सहशिक्षक सेन्ट्रल स्कुलबाट र हजुरहरु समक्ष फेरि एकचोटि यो जिटिएद्वारा आयोजित यो अनलाइन क्लासेसमा उपस्थित छु र आज भने म अर्को एउटा कविता म पढ्न अथवा म व्याख्या गर्न गइरहेको छु। कविताको शीर्षक हो एक दिन एकचोटि आउँछ। कवि हुन् गोपाल प्रसाद रिमाल। म अझै पनि भन्दैछु, यो जुन उच्चतर माध्यमिकको जुन परीक्षा छ त्यसै सम्बन्धी नै यो जिटिएको पहल हो कि नानीहरूलाई, विद्यार्थी नानीहरूलाई, उनीहरूलाई जति सक्दो सहज र सुगम बनाएर उनीहरूलाई यो जुन विषय छ यसलाई व्याख्या गरिदिनु पर्ने। त्यसैले गर्दाखेरि जुन एचएस को जुन एक्जाम्स छ त्यो एक्जाम्सको ध्येयले नै म पनि व्याख्या गर्न गइरहेको छु अथवा पढाउन गइरहेको छु। र एक दिन एकचोटि आउँछ कविता छ र हामीले गोपाल प्रसाद रिमाल यस कविताका उनी कवि हुन् र उनको पहिला हामी परिचय हेरौँ। परिचयमा हामीले उहाँको जन्म यस्तै किसिमको नै आउँछ। उहाँको जन्म, उहाँको प्रकाशित कृति, उहाँलाई नेपाली साहित्यको क्षेत्रमा के को रूपमा चिनिन्छ अनि उहाँले उहाँको कविताको विशेषताहरू के छन्, यस्तै कुरोहरू नै चाहिँ एमसीक्यूमा पनि आउँछ भने यता सर्ट एन्सर्स क्वेसन एन्सर्समा पनि त्यस्तै किसिमले नै आउँछ। त्यसैले गर्दाखेरि म यहाँनिर भन्न गइरहेको छु उहाँको जन्म सन् 1912 मा उनको जन्म भएको हो। जुन महिनामा भएको काठमाडौँमा जन्मेका उनी आईए सम्मको औपचारिक उनले शिक्षा ग्रहण गरेका हुन् उनले है। र उनले उनको देहान्त भयो सन् 1973 मा 1973 मा सन् हो यो, विक्रम सम्वत होइन है। र उनले नेपाली साहित्यमा निकै उनले ख्याति थोरै लेखे तर उनले नाम भने धेरै अथवा ख्याति प्राप्त गरे भनौँ उहाँले। र उनी नेपाली साहित्यमा विशेष, नेपाली साहित्य जगतमा उनलाई विशेष गद्य कविताका प्रवर्तकको रूपमा चिनिन्छ। एक सफल गद्यकारको रूपमा उहाँलाई चिन्छ। गद्य कविताको उनले गद्य कविताका उनी प्रवर्तक हुन्। यो पनि एउटा याद गरिराख्नुपर्छ, किन भन्दाखेरि यो सोधिन्छ, एमसीक्यूमा सोधिन्छ, त्यसले गर्दा मैले भनिराखेको यो। र उनको आमाको सपना, यो जुन आमाको सपना जुन चाहिँ कविता सङ्ग्रह हो, तर आमाको सपना मात्रै कविताबाट यो गद्य कविताको पनि प्रवर्तक भयो अथवा सुरु भएको, प्रारम्भ भएको हो। त्यसैले गर्दाखेरि उनलाई नेपाली साहित्यमा एकजना सफल प्रवर्तकको, गद्य कविताको सफल प्रवर्तकको रूपमा पनि उहाँलाई चिनिन्छ है। उनको कवितामा प्राय विद्रोहको स्वर पाइन्छ, विद्रोहको आवाजहरू पाइन्छौँ हामी। उहाँले त्यस समयको कुरा गर्दैछु जति बेला राजाहरूको तानाशाही थियो नेपालमा, त्यति बेलाको समयमा उनले कविताको माध्यमद्वारा उनले एउटा टर्कारो एउटा आवाज उठाएका थिए। उनको कविताहरूमा हामी क्रान्तिको आवाजहरू पाउँछौँ अनि उनी भनौँ उनको कवितामा क्रान्तिकारी विचारधाराहरू पनि हामीले पाउन सक्छौँ। उनलाई देशप्रतिको, जातिप्रतिको हैन, उनलाई एउटा प्रेम थिए। त्यसैले गर्दा उनको कवितामा हामी राष्ट्रिय प्रेम पनि हामी पाउँछौँ है। र उनलाई नेपाली साहित्यमा अझै यहाँ म लेख्दैछु प्रतीकवादी कविको रूपमा पनि हामी चिन्न सक्छौँ। उनको कविताहरूमा सरल, सहज बिम्ब र प्रतीकहरूको प्रयोग गरेका पाउँछौँ हामी। उनी यो जुन चाहिँ शास्त्रीय छन्ददेखि मुक्त भएर उनले गद्यमा, उनले बोलीचालीको भाषामा उनले कलात्मक रूपले उनले प्रस्तुत गरेका छन्। उनको कविताहरूमा हामी त्यो पाउँछौँ। र रिमालले आमाको सपना अथवा कविता बाहेक उनले नाटक र एकाङ्कीहरू पनि लेखेका छन्। जस्तै मसान हामी यो प्रेम, यो मसान र यो प्रेम नाटकमा पनि हामी उनको त्यही क्रान्तिको स्वर हामीले देख्न पाउँछौँ। यसमा विशेष गरी उनले मसानमा विशेष गरी नारीलाई उनले एउटा समाजमा जुन प्रकारले उनलाई अत्याचार र शोषण गरेर राखिएका छन्, उनले नारीलाई एउटा प्रतीक बनाएर उनले नारीको त्यो आवाजलाई उनले उठाउन लागेका छन्। नारी केवल शिशु बनाउने मसिन मात्र होइन भन्ने कुरो त्यति बेलाको समयमा नै उनले मसान, त्यसैले गर्दा जुन घरमा यदि त्यो धारणा त्यो विचार लिएर बसेका हुन्छन् कि नारी केवल एउटा शिशु जन्माउने मसिन मात्रै हो भनेर यदि त्यो मानिस त्यो घरले सोच्छ भने त्यो घर मसान सम्मान हो भन्ने कुरो पनि उनले व्यक्त गरेका छन्। भनौँ नारीको निम्ति पनि उनले आवाज उठाएका छन्, देशको निम्ति पनि उनले आवाज उठाएका छन्। उनले तानाशाहीको विरुद्ध पनि उनले आवाज उठाएका छन्। र यो भयो गोपाल प्रसाद रिमालको छोटो अनि संक्षिप्त परिचय। अनि म अझै पनि आग्रह गर्छु विद्यार्थी नानीहरूलाई कि एकचोटि आफैले पनि सरसर्ती यो परिचय पनि पढ्ने हो। केवल सुनेको भरमा मात्र पनि हामीले इक्जाम्स अथवा परीक्षा गर्न मिल्दैन। आफूले पनि एकचोटि सरसर्ती चाहिँ पढ्नु अति आवश्यक छ। र अब म यो व्याख्या गर्न गइरहेको छु। एक दिन एकचोटि आउँछ कविता। अब यहाँनिर एक दिन एकचोटि आउँछ भन्दाखेरि कता कता हामी आशावादी, कता कता हामी यहाँनिर एउटा विश्वास उनमा छ कि हाम्रो पनि एक दिन त आउँछ होला नि। इङ्ग्लिसमा भनाइन्छ नि ए डग ह्याज अ डे, एउटा कुकुरको पनि दिन आउँछ भनेपछि त हामी त मान्छे हुन् त, मान्छेको त एक दिन एउटा राम्रो समय एउटा सुखको दिन त हाम्रो पनि आङमा त घाम लाग्छ नि त भन्ने उनको एउटा जुन सोचाइ छ त्यो उनी आशावादी छन्। ओके, र यहाँनिर चाहिँ एक दिन एकचोटि आउँछ। यसको पृष्ठभूमि अलिकति हामी हेर्नु पर्दाखेरि यो मैले अझै पनि भने हुन त हामीले त्यो पृष्ठभूमिमा नहेरौँ र पनि म यो जनाइ चाहिँ राख्न चाहन्छु कि नेपालमा जुन अत्याचार शोषण थियो हैन, जुन प्रकारले थिचो सामाजिक रूपले, राजनैतिक रूपले, आर्थिक रूपले पनि शोषित भएका ती नेपालमा कविले एउटा आवाज उठाएका छन् कि गरिब दुखीहरूको हैन, ती शोषितहरूको, ती पीडितहरूको पनि एक दिन त समय आउँछ भन्न यहाँ खोजेको छ। र कविले यहाँनिर यस्तो प्रकारले व्याख्या गरेका छन्, एक जुगमा एक दिन एकचोटि आउँछ, उलट पुलट उथुल पुथुल हेरफेर ल्याउँछ। अब यो दुईटा पंक्तिमा के भन्दैछन् भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ जुग भन्नाले यहाँनिर एक युग भनेको एउटा सेन्चुरी भनेको हो कि एक सेन्चुरी अथवा एक युगमा है एक दिन त आउँछ। यहाँ वर्षको कुरा गरेका छन्, यहाँ महिनाको कुरा गरेका छन्, तर यहाँ भन्दैछ एउटा युगमा नै एक दिन त आउँछ। पर्खिनु मात्र पर्छ, धैर्यता चाहिन्छ हैन। एक युगमा एक जुगमा एकचोटि एक दिन एकचोटि आउँछ है। अनि उलट पुलट उथल पुलट हेरफेर ल्याउँछ भन्नु खोजेको चाहिँ सबै तहस नहस हुन्छ अथवा भनौँ उलट पुलट हुन्छ हैन, उथुल पुथुल हुन्छ भनौँ। यहाँनिर एक किसिमको भूकम्प आउँछ, एक किसिमको भुइँचालो आउँछ। तर यहाँ भुइँचालो साँच्चैको भुइँचालो भने होइन, विचारको भुइँचालो हुनसक्छ यहाँनिर हैन। शिक्षामा आउनु सक्छ यो भुइँचालो, या आर्थिक रूपमा पनि यो भुइँचालो आउन सक्छ भनौँ। कविले यहाँ के भन्दैछन् भन्दा चाहिँ त्यो परिवर्तनको कुरा गर्दैछन् हैन। एक दिन त परिवर्तन हुन्छ नि त हैन, हाम्रो पनि समय आउँछ नि त भनेर कवि भन्छन्। उलट पुलट अनि हेरफेर ल्याउँछ, परिवर्तन ल्याउँछ हरेक रूपमा। लाटा सुदा बोल्न थाल्छन्, चल्छ ओठ दुःखको, सहे भनी सम्झिएको इक फेर्न उड्दछन्। कविले यहाँ भन्छन् कि लाटा सुदा मान्छे पनि, जसलाई निमुखा, जसलाई लाटा, जो बोल्नु सक्दैनन्, यिनीहरूले आफ्नो अधिकार हक माग्न सक्दैनन् भनेर जसलाई सोचिरहेका हुन्छौँ, तिनीहरू पनि कुनै कुरोको पनि एउटा के हुन्छ भने सेचुरेसन पिरियड भन्छ नि, एउटा सीमा हुन्छन् है। त्यो सीमा जब नागिसकेपछि चाहिँ त्यसपछि भन्छ नि के भन्छ, कुकुरलाई पनि आफैले पालेको कुकुरलाई पनि जिस्काउँदा जिस्काउँदा त्यसले पनि मालिक पनि नभनिकन टोक्छ। भनौँ भने त्यसले पनि एउटा विरोध गर्छ भन्नु खोजिएको हो नि त। भनेपछि हामी मान्छे हो, हाम्रो पनि हरेक कुरोको के हुन्छ, सीमा हुन्छ। यो सीमा नागिसकेपछि त्यो लाटा भनेर सम्झेको, जसलाई निमुखा भनेर सम्झेको, जसले केही माग्न सक्दैनन्, उसको आवाजहरू थुनिएको छ भनेर सोचिरहेको त्यसका होठहरू पनि चल्न थाल्दछ भनेर कवि भन्छन्। अनि जसले सहे भनेर मैले भनिहालेँ अघि पनि, सहनु होइन, त्यसले पनि एक दिन इक फेर्न, भनौँ त्यसले पनि विरोध गर्न, आवाज उठाउन सडकमा गल्लीमा उत्रिन्छ भनेर कवि भन्छन्। मैले भने अझै पनि तिनीहरू आर्थिक रूपले, राजनैतिक रूपले होइन, अनि सामाजिक रूपले पनि तिनीहरू थिचोमिचो भएका, अनि यी जम्मैमा नै के हुन्छन्, एक दिन परिवर्तन आउँछन्। गए भनी नदेखिएका फर्की आउँछन्, सुते भनी सम्झिएका सुरु हिँड्दछन्, मरे भनी फ्याँकिएका झुरु उड्दछन्। गए भनी, अब यो त गयो, अब यसले त गइसकेपछि अब भनौँ पलायन भएकाहरू भनौँ न होइन, एउटा गाउँ छोडेर अर्को सहरतिर बसेको, सहर छोडेर विदेशतिर लागेकाहरू पनि एक दिन फर्केर आउँछ। उनीहरूले पनि उनीहरूको विचारमा, उनीहरूको धारणामा, उनीहरूको मनमा एउटा परिवर्तन आउँछ। अनि उनीहरूले ती तानाशाहीको, ती शासक वर्गको, ती शोषण गर्ने ती व्यक्तिहरूप्रति उनीहरूले पनि आवाज उठाउँछन्। अब सुते भनी, जो चाहिँ अब यिनीहरू निष्प्राण छन्, यिनीहरूकोमा त्यो क्षमतै छैन, यिनीहरूकोमा त्यो बलै छैन, यिनीहरूले आवाजै उठाउँदैनन्, यिनीहरू त जिउँदो एउटा लास हो होइन, जिउँदो लास सम्मानको हो भनेर निष्प्राण भएका भनेर सम्झिएका ती शासकहरूले भुल गर्दैछन्। यिनीहरू पनि अब आफ्नो जुर मुराएर उठ्नेछन्, आफ्नो आवाजसित आफ्नो हक र अधिकारलाई माग्नका निम्ति उनीहरू अब फेरि उठ्नेछन्। सधैँभरि यस्तै प्रकारको बसिरहँदैन, सधैँभरि यही प्रकारको व्यवस्था, यही किसिमको अवस्था रहिरहँदैन। एक दिन न एक दिन परिवर्तन हुन्छन्, तर जुन दिन आउँछन् त्यो दिनको प्रतीक्षामा छ कवि गोपाल प्रसाद श्रीमाल। मरे भनी फ्याँकिएका झुरु उड्दछन्, खरानी हुन्छ भरभराउँदो हुरी चल्न थाल्दछ। त्यति बेला यस्तो हुनेछन् कि हरेक क्षेत्रमा, हरेक ठाउँमा, हरेक विभागहरूमा एउटा हुरी चल्दछन्, आँधी आउँछन्, परिवर्तन आउँछन्। भनौँ उनीहरूले विद्रोह गर्छन् होइन, एउटा क्रान्ति ल्याउँछन्। अनि यो भुल धारणामा जहिले पनि भन्छ सही, एउटा भुप्रोमा पनि होइन, एउटा खरानीभित्र पनि एउटा भुप्रो हुन्छ, आगोको झिल्काहरू हुन्छन् होइन। समय मात्रै पर्खिनुपर्छ, त्यसमा कि फुक्नु पर्यो कि एउटा केही वेग चल्नु पर्यो हावाको, तब त्यो आगो फेरि ज्वालो भएर उठ्नेछन् होइन। र कविले यही कुरो भन्छन्, खरानी हुन्छ भरभराउँदो हुरी चल्न थाल्दछ। सहन्छन् मान्छेको प्रवृत्ति त्यही हुन्छन् होइन। लाटाहरू सोझाहरू, सिधाहरू, इमान्दारहरू उनीहरू सहन्छन्, तर जुन दिन उनीहरूले परिवर्तन ल्याउँछन् त्यो दिन साँच्चै नै परिवर्तन हुनेछन्। अनि हामीले परिवर्तन केवल बाह्य रूप मात्रै होइन, तर विचारमा पनि हामी परिवर्तन ल्याएको हामी देख्न सक्छौँ। र कविले यही कुरो यहाँनिर भन्दैछन्, खरानी हुन्छ भरभराउँदो हुरी चल्न थाल्दछ, कायर पनि वीर हुन्छ वेग चल्छ जोसको। जो मान्छे कमजोर छ, जो मान्छे निर्बल छ, उनीहरू निर्धन छ, यिनीहरू पनि के हुन्छन्, कायर छन्, काफारे छन्। यिनीहरू पनि जोससित यिनीहरू सडकमा ओर्लेर त्यो शासकको, त्यो शासन व्यवस्थाको होइन, त्यो तनाशाहीको विरुद्धमा उनीहरूले पनि आवाज उठाउने छन् भनेर कवि भन्छन्। सायद यस्तै किसिमको अवस्थाहरू आजभोलि हामीले देख्न पाइरहेका छौँ होइन। जुन अवस्था र जुन व्यवस्था छ, त्यो व्यवस्थाले नै चाहिँ वास्तवमा मान्छेलाई पीडित बनाउँछन्। अब यो भएन भन्दै बस्छन्, त्यो भएन भन्दै बस्छन्, तर त्यो भएन यो भएन भन्दा भन्दै एक दिन हुनु हुँदैन भनेर एउटा आवाज निकाल्ने कुनै एउटा राजनेता या कुनै एउटा विद्रोही ती व्यक्ति निस्केपछि साँच्चै नै देशमा हुरी चल्छन्, व्यवस्थामा हुरी चल्छन्, यो अवस्थामा हुरी चल्छन् अनि परिवर्तन निश्चय नै हुनेछन्। हाहाकार मच्छ, यहाँ पाप खुल्न थाल्दछ, एक जुगमा एक दिन एकचोटि आउँछ है। हाहाकार मच्छ। ओके, अब त्यति बेला हाहाकार चाहिँ ती राजनेताहरूको, ती तानाशाहीहरूको हैन, ती शासकहरू माझमा हाहाकार मच्दछ अनि तिनीहरूले गरेका ती कुकर्महरू, तिनीहरूले गरेका ती घोटालाहरू, तिनीहरूले गरेका ती पापहरू जति जति पनि छन् त्यो सबै खुल्न थाल्दछन्। मान्छेको अगाडि उदाङ्गो हुनेछ, अघिसम्म ढाकछोप गरेर राखिएका कुरोहरू पनि अब उदाङ्गो हुनेछन्। उनीहरूले गरेका ती कर्महरू जति पनि छन् जनता समक्ष हैन, जनसाधारण समक्ष, जनार्दन समक्ष त्यो जम्मै उदाङ्गो हुनेछन् अनि उनीहरूले थाहा पाउनेछन् ती शासकमा ती राजनेता कतिको पापी थिएछन्, तिनीहरूले कतिको थिचोमिचो गरेछन् भन्ने कुरो पनि खुलस्त हुनेछन् अनि उनीहरूको भण्डाफोर हुनेछ भनेर कवि भन्छन्। अनि अन्तमा भन्छन् सायद त्यो दिन एक जुगमा एक दिन त अवश्य नै आउँछ, अहिले केवल हामीले प्रतीक्षा मात्रै गर्नुपर्छ, आशावादी हुनुपर्छ कि परिवर्तन अवश्य नै हुन्छ भनेर हामीमा नकारात्मक विचार लिएर निराशा भएर हामी बस्नु हुँदैन भनेर भन्छन्। र एक जुगमा एक दिन एकचोटि आउँछ अनि अवश्य आउँछ भनेर कवि आशावादी बन्दै एउटा परिवर्तनको, एउटा नयाँ संसारको नौलो विचारधाराको उनले परिकल्पना गरेका छन्। जुन परिकल्पना कति साक्षात् पनि भएको छन्, कति त्यो साकार पनि भएको छन् है। हामी देख्न पाइरहेछौँ नेपालमा आज हामी हैन, गणतन्त्र त्यहाँनिर भइरहेछ हैन, डेमोक्रेसी त्यहाँ स्ट्याब्लिस भएको छ है। त त्यस्तै किसिमले सायद अब हरेक यो केवल नेपालसित मात्रै यो जोड्न मिल्दैन, हामीले हाम्रो ठाउँहरूमा पनि हामी हेर्न सक्छौँ कि हामी पनि आशावादी हुनुपर्छ। जसरी कवि आशावादी भएका छन् अनि आशावादी भएर उनले भन्छन् कि एक दिन त अवश्य नै आउँछ, केवल प्रतीक्षा गर्नुपर्छ, सकारात्मक विचार राख्नुपर्छ भनेर कवि भन्छन्। र यससित म आजको अनलाइन क्लास म यहीँनिर नै समाप्त गर्दैछु। धन्यवाद।
Hello students, I am Rinchen Norbu. I teach in Girls Higher Secondary School. The second chapter has been completed, that was on demand, right? So today we'll do the third chapter, that is the concept of elasticity. Okay, now before we go to the third chapter, I'd like to explain or just do a quick recapitulation of some of the basic points of the second chapter that would be helpful for us to understand the third chapter better. Okay. Now, in the second chapter, we had studied about demand, right? Demand, and we also studied that demand depends upon certain factors. We had studied the determinants of demand, all right, or the factors affecting demand. And so just to sum a few of it, it was price of the commodity itself, all right? Then the next one was price of related commodities, then we had income, right? And then we had habits and tastes. So these are a few that I'm naming right now, etc. Okay? So in the second chapter, when we do a quick recap, since it's important for us to understand the third chapter, we are done that demand depends upon certain factors. These are the determinants of demand. All right? Now, therefore, demand becomes what? Demand is a dependent variable, since it depends on these factors, and all these other factors are what? Are independent variables. Okay. Now, so we can understand very clearly that, say, X be the demand, depends upon, say, Y. So these Y is all these other factors. So X being demand, we can write it algebraically. F means what? Depends upon, and Y are these are the factors on which demand depends upon. Okay? So the reason why I'm doing a quick recap of this is because it will help you understand the third chapter better. Okay? So we said that demand depends on all these factors, and it is very clear to us that demand depends upon these factors. Okay? Now, we had also said that whenever price increases, demand for the commodity decreases, right? So whenever there is an increase in income of the consumer, then what happens? Demand, specifically speaking, demand for normal goods increases with an increase in demand, right? But now, it was not clear. It was clear that there would be a change in demand when these factors change. But the degree of change, okay, the responsiveness of change of demand due to the change of these factors is dealt in this chapter, concept of elasticity. Okay? So what is the concept of elasticity? The elasticity of demand helps us understand the degree of responsiveness or the change of demand. How much will demand change? In simple words, how much will demand change when there is a change in any of these factors? All right? So say, for example, if price changes by 10 rupees, then how much will demand change? Say demand for any commodity, say potatoes for instance. Will the demand for potatoes increase by 1 kg? Will it increase by 2 kgs or 3 kgs? Or what will happen? Or will the demand decrease? All right, so this is a very relative term because whenever there is a change in price, the change of commodity, the change in demand for each commodity will be different. It will not be the same for all the commodities. Similarly, when there is a change in price of any commodity, then there also be a change in demand for different consumers differently. We all are different individuals, right? So our change in demand will not be the same. So let me conclude whatever I've explained right now. The chapter concept of elasticity helps us understand the responsiveness, all right? The responsiveness of demand due to the change in these factors. All right? Or we can simply say that the concept of elasticity will help us understand how much the rate of change of demand due to the rate of change in the independent variables. All right? So we can therefore write the function of elasticity of demand can be written as, so I'm writing this signal for elasticity, okay? So elasticity of DD, I'm using short forms. Elasticity of demand can be written as percentage change in quantity, DD means demanded, due to percentage change in the independent variables. Okay? So now, therefore, what is elasticity of demand? Elasticity of demand, mathematically speaking, is the percentage change in quantity demanded due to the percentage change in the independent variable. Any one of the independent variable, all other variables remaining constant. Okay? Now, since we know that these independent variables, which I just discussed, could be price, could be the income of the consumer, could be price of related commodities, right? So there will be different elasticities of demand depending upon which variable we choose, which independent variable we choose, okay? So elasticity of demand, the broad definition must be clear to you. That is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in independent variable. So let's go on with the first variable, that is the income of the consumer. So that is dealt in income elasticity of demand. Okay? Now, income elasticity of demand means whenever there is a change in income of a consumer, how much will be the change in the quantity demanded, all right. So, we can therefore say that income elasticity of demand is what? Is the amount of change in demand or the percentage change in quantity demanded due to 1% change in the income of the consumer, other things remaining constant, all right. Now, so for income elasticity of demand, say for example, X is the commodity, and M we write it as what? Money income. So, the term should be clear. M is money income and X is the demand of the commodity. Okay? Now, for income elasticity, that definition which I just showed to you right now, which I just erased it, was what? Percentage, I'm just using delta for change, percentage change in quantity demanded of X divided by percentage change in the money income. Okay, so I'm just writing it by M, money income of the consumer. Now, what is this? Percentage change in quantity demanded can be represented algebraically as delta X. Delta means what? Change. And this X is your initial quantity that you demanded before the change. So, delta X is your change in quantity demanded and X is your initial quantity that you demanded before the change in the income. Okay? Multiplied by 100. Since we are taking out percentage, so you have to multiply it by 100. Okay? And the next one we write it as percentage change in money income. We can write it as delta M, where this is the change in income. What is your new income minus your old income? Minus M, which is your initial income or your old income before the change. And since we are taking out percentage, we'll write it multiplied by 100. So let's simplify this equation further. So that becomes delta X divided by X. 100 will just cancel out, right? Divided by delta M divided by M. Okay, we further simplify it. Delta X divided by X multiplied by M divided by delta M, which we further putting delta on one side, delta X divided by delta M is equal to M divided by X. So, is that clear? So, we have come here. I hope this is clear to you. This is a little bit mathematical. Delta X is the change in your what? Change in your demand, that is your new demand minus your old demand, divided by X, that is your old demand before the change, multiplied by 100 since you are taking out percentage. The whole thing divided by this, that is your delta M, that is a change in your income, new income minus your old income, divided by M, which is your initial income or your old income multiplied by 100. So, when we simplified further, this you have done in junior classes also, simple maths, delta M divided by X, 100 cancels out, divided by delta M by M, and then you get delta X by X multiplied by, the numerator goes up, you know, M multiplied by XM. So, we put delta on one side, delta X divided by delta M, which is equal to M by X, all right. So far it must be clear, I think it is clear to you. Now, this M, what is this? This is your money income. And this X, that is your demand. So, these two things can never be negative, right? It's always positive. So, your income elasticity, your sign of income elasticity depends upon these two variables, delta X and delta M, okay? Now, your income elasticity depends on, what did I say? These two variables, okay? Your income elasticity can either be positive, it can be negative, it can be 1 greater than, it can be 1 greater than 1, less than 1 or 0, okay. So, now let's take the case of, say for example, let's take the case for normal goods. Now, what happens in case of normal goods? Whenever there is an increase in income of a person, then what happens? The demand for normal goods will increase. So, in that case, your income elasticity of demand will be positive in case of normal goods. Now, in case of inferior goods, which we have done earlier, what are inferior goods? Inferior goods are those goods which is a little bit inferior in quality, as the name itself says, right? And obviously, it is cheaper than the normal goods. The example that I gave you is ration shops, right? Wherein you get rice, you get pulses, you get oil, you get sugar at a very subsidized rate that has been provided by the government. But however, the quality is also a little bit inferior than compared to what you get in the normal grocery stores, right? So, what happens when the income of the person increases, then that person will stop consuming these inferior goods. They'll go on and purchase superior quality goods, right? So what happens in the case of inferior goods? When there is a rise in income, of the consumer, people will stop demanding these inferior goods. So the income effect will be what? Negative. Income elasticity of demand will be negative in case of inferior goods, all right? Now say for example in case of luxuries. Now luxuries are what? Those are those commodities which you demand when you have extra income, when you have surplus. After spending on your necessities, okay, whatever you need, whatever is left, you spend it on your luxuries, right? So in that case, what happens? Your elasticity of demand is greater than 1 in case of luxuries. Now, why is it greater than 1? That is because if there is an increase in income by 1%, then your increase in luxuries will be greater than 1%. Now, in case of necessities, say items like medicines or your daily food supplies, which is very necessary for you to survive, right? So in that case, your income elasticity will be less than 1. If there is an increase or decrease in income by 1%, the increase and decrease will be less than 1%, okay? This is in case of your necessities. All right, now so we have discussed what? The income elasticity of demand. Now the other independent variable was what? Price of related goods, right? So there we would discuss, that would be known as your cross elasticity of demand, CROSS. Okay, this is not G, sorry, this is C, okay, CROSS. So we did income elasticity, now it's cross elasticity of demand. Now when we are doing cross elasticity of demand, now cross elasticity of demand means the responsiveness or the change of demand due to the change in the related goods. Now, what kind of related goods are we talking about here? We are talking about complementary goods and we are talking about substitutes, right? Which we will deal step by step, okay? Now, in cross elasticity of demand, let the definition be clear first. Cross elasticity of demand means the percentage change in quantity demanded due to 1% change in its related goods. And related goods, as I told you, could be complementary goods or could be what? Substitutes. All right. Now the definition, now if you look at this formula, it is simple, more or less the same for the three concepts. There are just a few differences here. So in cross elasticity of demand also, your formula is percentage change in quantity demanded of, let's say, X as one of the commodities, divided by percentage change in price of Y. Okay? So here we have taken the commodity as X and PY is the price of commodity Y. So we have taken two commodities here. One is commodity X and one is commodity Y. Okay? We have taken two commodities. Let me make it clear again. One is commodity X and the other one is what? Commodity Y. Okay? Okay? So now let this commodity X and Y be substitutes. So first we are going to deal with commodities that are substitutes. Now substitutes are what? These are those commodities, if we do not find one, then we can go ahead using the other one. Say for example, tea and coffee are perfect substitutes, or Coca-Cola and Pepsi, those are also perfect substitutes. All right. Now what happens in the case of substitutes is, say for example, a can of Pepsi costs you rupees 20 and a can of Coca-Cola also costs you rupees 20. But for any reason, okay, the price of Pepsi increases from 20 to how much? 25 rupees. Now what is happening? Now price of say Pepsi X, price of X is increasing from 20 to 25 rupees. So therefore your demand for X will what? Fall. Now people, since Pepsi and Coca-Cola are very good substitutes, people will go ahead and consume Coca-Cola. So therefore the demand for Y will increase. Is that clear? This can happen with tea and coffee also. When the price of Pepsi increased, people stopped the consumption of Pepsi and went to its better substitute or close substitute, which is Coca-Cola, and hence the demand for Coca-Cola rose. All right, this can happen in the case of tea and coffee also. So here what is happening? Because of the rise in the price of X, what is happening? The demand for Y is rising. So we see a kind of a positive relation between the two. When this is rising, the other one is also rising. So here your cross elasticity of demand will be what? Positive. Okay? Now let me go ahead here and do this for you. Percentage change in quantity demanded, again the same thing. Delta X divided by X into 100. I'm not going to repeat this again. I hope you understand. All right? And delta price of Y divided by initial price y multiplied by 100. Okay? Now, when you go ahead and simplify it further, it becomes delta x divided by x divided by delta py divided by py. Okay? You simplify it further, delta x divided by x multiplied by py divided by delta py. You go ahead and simplify it further, delta x divided by delta py into py divided by x. Okay? So here also we see that py and px are positive. This can never be negative. Can price ever be negative? Can the price of anything be minus 10 rupees? Or can your consumption be ever negative? You consume minus 10 rotis today. Is it minus 1 roti today? That's not possible at all, right? So these are always positive. Now, the sign of cross elasticity of demand depends upon delta x plus delta py. Okay? So let me come back to what I was teaching you right now. I was talking about substitutes. So what happens in the case of substitutes? If the price of x rises, then the demand for y will rise. Okay? In that case, we see that there is a positive elasticity of demand is positive in case of substitutes. Now let's talk about complementary goods. Now complementary goods are what? Are those goods which complete each other, which cannot do without each other. Alright, they have to be used together. Like say car and petrol. These are what? Complementary goods. Or you can say car and diesel, but let's take the example of car and petrol. Okay, because car cannot run without fuel, right? So let's take fuel here as petrol. Okay. Now what happens when the price of car rises? Now we are talking about complementary goods. When the price of your car, X is your car, is rising, then what will happen? Demand for your car will fall. Demand for car will fall, hence your demand for Y, that is your petrol, demand for petrol will also fall. So in this case, you see a kind of a negative relation, inverse relation. When the price of car is rising, the demand for petrol is falling. So here you can see that your cross elasticity of demand in case of complements is what? Negative. All right? So, but in case of goods that are not related to each other at all, like your blackboard and say a car, or your bag and the food that you eat, these are unrelated goods. So in that case, if the goods are not related at all, then there is zero. The elasticity or the cross elasticity of demand is zero. All right? So the sign regarding whether it is positive, whether it is negative, it is very important. Why? Because it helps us to understand the relationship between different goods, whether it is a complementary good, whether it is a substitute good. Okay? So we have discussed cross price elasticity of demand. Cross price elasticity of demand has been discussed. Now we'll come to the third concept or the last concept, that is own price elasticity of demand. Okay, so there's a lot of algebraical works here, so you can do it together while you're listening or looking at the recording, and you need to do it when you are practicing it at home also, right? Now, own price elasticity. Now, as the word itself says, own price elasticity means the responsiveness of change in demand due to the change in its own price. All right? The change in the quantity demanded of potatoes due to the change in the price of potatoes. All right? So own price, whenever there is a change in the own price. Now the formula again would be the same. Percentage change in quantity demanded. Say the commodity I take is X. We are not dealing with Y right now. We are just dealing with X. In quantity demanded, percentage change in quantity demanded of X divided by percentage change in price of X. All right. So here what are we dealing with? We are taking into consideration the change in quantity demanded of X, say if X is potatoes, with respect to the change in the price of X, that is change in the price of potatoes. What will happen when the price of potatoes will change? All right. Now in this case, also, your formula will be delta x, that is the change in x, initial x multiplied by 100, the whole thing divided by delta px, price of x, divided by initial x multiplied by 100. Okay? So we simplify further like the way we did it before, x multiplied by, so we'll do it straight away, okay? Px, we won't go step by step since we've done it earlier also. When you do it, I would recommend you to do it step by step so that you don't confuse yourself. So since we've done it 3 times, I just jumped into the second step, all right. Now, so here we get this equation, all right, mathematical derivation, and this will always be positive because price will always be positive and x will also always be positive. So the sign of own price elasticity depends upon delta x divided by delta py. Okay. Now, so after understanding this, what is the definition of own price elasticity of demand? It is same as the previous elasticity of demand. Now, own price elasticity of demand is the percentage change in the quantity demanded of x due to 1% change in the price of x. All right. Now, we are talking about own price elasticity of demand. That is the price of the commodity itself. Now, say for example, if the demand curve is downward sloping. Now, when is the demand curve downward sloping? Generally in case of normal goods, right? So, if the demand curve is downward sloping, then your elasticity, own price elasticity will be own price E, let me just write it at Px or Ex also you can write, will be negative. Elasticity will be negative, is going in the opposite direction. Now, if your demand curve is upward rising, then your income or own price elasticity of income will be what? Positive. Now, say for example, your demand curve is parallel to the y-axis. This is a y-axis and this is a x-axis, x, y, y, x, okay. So, this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis and you are marking price here. So, now what is happening? Price is changing from 1 to 2 units, then is increasing to 3 units, then to 4 units, but your demand is stuck to 3 units. So, what do you see here? There has been a considerable increase or a decrease in price, but is your demand changing? No, right? So, in this case what happens? Your own price elasticity is equal to 0. That is, it is inelastic. This happens in case of necessities or items that are which you use regularly, habituated items also, all right. And then next comes your elasticity of demand, which will be like this. This is y, this is x and o. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So here what is happening? There has been no change in price. Price is remaining constant to 3 units, all right. But your quantity demanded is changing to, it can either be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3, it can be 4. So without any change in price, there has been a considerable change in the quantity demanded of x. So in this case, your elasticity will be equal to infinity. All right. So these are the different situations. So depending whether the demand curve is downward sloping, upward rising, parallel to the x-axis, parallel to the y-axis, you can easily understand whether you can easily understand the own price elasticity of demand, the sign of the own price elasticity of demand. All right. Now, before we do this, before I tell you the importance of the elasticity of demand, now let me quickly explain to you the factors affecting elasticity of demand, okay? Now, what are the factors on which the elasticity of demand depends upon? Okay. Now, the first factor on which the elasticity of demand depends upon is the nature of the commodity. Now, it could either be necessity. We can broadly categorize commodities to luxuries, to necessities, or items that we are habituated to. All right. So, say for example, if it is a luxury, then what happens? The elasticity of demand will be very high. All right. But if it is a necessity or items that you are habituated to, in that case, elasticity is very low or it is very inelastic. It can also be with regard to your type of the commodity, whether it is durable or non-durable. In case of durable commodities, elasticity is very low, but in case of non-durable commodities, elasticity would be it is generally elastic, or elasticity is high. Now, if the commodity has many substitutes, all right, like Pepsi has Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Fanta, so in that case, your elasticity is high, but if it does not have close substitutes, then your elasticity will be low, all right. Now, if any commodity has a lot of alternate uses, then what happens? The elasticity is high again, but if it does not have much alternative uses, then the elasticity is low, all right. Now, it could also be with regard to your the amount of change in price. If the change in price is considerable, is very large, then in that case it is inelastic. But if the change in price is not so much, it is relatively lesser, then the elasticity will be obviously less elastic. All right. So in this case, there are various factors on which your elasticity of a demand depends upon. All right. Now, why do we study elasticity then? We studied income elasticity of demand, we studied cross price elasticity of demand, and we also studied own price elasticity of demand. The reason why we study elasticity of demand is because as producers, okay, it gives us a picture that whenever I want to change the price of my commodity, what will happen to my sales? How much will people react to the change in demand? Whether the people will cut down their demand totally, or by how much percent will they cut down the demand? Will it affect my sales badly? So that is the reason why producers need to understand the concept of elasticity of demand. Similarly, when a government is levying taxes, indirect taxes on each and every commodity that you use is levied with taxes. And some of the commodities are so high because of high taxes, right? So in this case, it's a study to understand, okay, if I increase taxes, the prices of the goods will increase considerably. Will that affect demand to an extent of minimizing sales, hampering sales completely? Is it a good decision? So in that case also, it gives a picture to the government whether should they increase taxes and by how much should they increase or levy the taxes. All right. So we have discussed majorly the concept of elasticity, the third chapter to you. So I hope it is clear to you. If there's any questions, you can always drop it down. Okay. Thank you.